Welcome to our presentation, The Impact of Instructions on Performance Outcomes. During this presentation, we will define instruction with relation to sport, identify the different types of instruction, look at how instruction impacts performance with regards to sprinting, as well as look at how kinematics and kinetics are affected, then finally look at the application and considerations for training. When defining instruction, we are looking for a direction or order, as well as detailed information about how something should be done. Referring to sport, instructions aim to support our athletes to search for performance solutions. There are different types of instructions, so we have explicit, implicit, then internal and external, with our ultimate aim to encourage improvements in biomechanics, physiological, psychophysical, and motor learning outcomes. Explicit and implicit instructions are related to awareness of the task, with explicit instructions having partial or full awareness of the task, whilst implicit relates to no awareness of the task requirements. When we look at internal and external cues, we look at how we want to direct our information, which can be seen clearly in this slide from the table by Winkelman and the image from Benz et al. Internal focus directs the athlete's attention to themselves, whilst external directs their attention to a fixed point away from their body. This can be seen in both the table and the image. So there is a lot of research out there regarding instructions for performance and otherwise stated as attentional focus. More extensive research has been completed in sprinting, which we'll go into in more detail on the next slide. There is also a lot of research across a vast array of sports and skills, which makes some of the research hard to compare. However, there are some common themes along the way which are important when we want to apply our instructions. Instructions also provide us with the ability to manipulate the human body and therefore identifies changes in kinematics and kinetics. So we know there's a lot of research out there about sprinting and external and internal focus instructions or attention. Now, most of them are limited by experience, with a limited research comparing the two in a single experiment, and further research would help to clarify this point. However, Winkelman 2017 found when comparing collegiate soccer players to elite sprinters over a 10-metre sprint, the soccer players found significant enhancements in performance with external focused instructions. However, the elite sprinters, there were no significant difference between external, internal, or no focus. This could potentially show a difference with a longer distance. However, further research would have to be done to see if this is the case. Most research was performed by Jared Porter and therefore may show bias in his research when focusing on sprinting. However, his evidence across 3 studies found that 84.6% of track coaches and athletes used internal focused instructions in practice, and that 69% of athletes used these internal instructions during competition. Low-skilled sprinters showed a significant enhancement in performance with the use of external instructions, whilst highly trained athletes found the use of no focus provided the greatest enhancement for performance. This highlights an experience level consideration when looking at sprinting, and that we may have to modify our instructions depending on the athlete we are coaching. Porter and Sims 2013 and Winkelman 2017 both came to the similar results, with experienced sprinters showing no difference between instruction, whilst low-skilled sprinters respond better to external focused instructions. Both focused on short sprint performance, and so these studies may show some comparability. In other sports, research such as CAL found that automaticity was increased when using implicit. However, this only shows minor comparisons, and therefore we're unable to state that there is significant comparison to explicit. Kamara et al. Found that combining internal attention induced by analogy instructions, this was beneficial to help interlimb coordination while swimming. This was able to greatly increase swimming efficiency. This is limited by only using swimmers, and the emerging of instruction types may require further research. Bevan and Franzen looked into the decision-making in soccer and found that compatible pre-cues were able to enhance decision-making performance. However, the use of incompatible pre-cues actually hindered their performance during decision-making. And so advanced coaching with experienced athletes use more of an an implicit approach to allow players to optimize their decision-making capabilities. There is very limited research into decision-making and soccer, and therefore further research would be required to support this. Whilst we look at the performance outcomes, it's also important to understand that there are multiple ways in which instructions can affect our kinematics and kinetics, which we may choose to use for desired outcomes. Kirshner 2017 found that force time characteristics during CMJ for baseball players significantly improved jump height, peak velocity, and other measures with the use of external focused instructions. However, it is questionable how relative a CMJ is to a baseball player, and therefore questions whether this would be related to an experienced or a novice athlete. Tateshi et al. 2011 found the impact of our instructions can manipulate forces at other joints. In this study, the internal instruction towards the ankle was able to influence the distribution between the ankle and the hip complex. Wolf and Dufek 2008 and Nadzelan et al. 2019 found that the use of instructions has the ability to make our movements more efficient, highlighting economical benefits which were expressed whilst using external focused instructions compared to internally focused. These studies looked at counter movement jump and a 10 rep max squat, with force production and muscle activity also measured. Marchand et al. 2013 found enhancements with external focused instructions on muscular endurance during a 75% max rep bench press, implying that external focus is beneficial to movement efficiency and muscular endurance. This used regular exercise users with experience performing bench press. However, this study did not quality assure the repetitions of bench and therefore cannot state whether individual competency can be assured. Further, to expand the use of external focus instructions, this is supported with the enhancement in kinematics of the snatch lift, with external focus instructions during the barbell cervical pelvic angle, and further enhancing the barbell's path of least resistance and reinforcing this idea of movement efficiency. This study by Schutz et al. 2017 is easily repeatable, however only uses a small sample size of 12 competitive athletes. The study contradicts that of papers highlighting that elite competitors need external instructions compared to internal instructions, which have been shown in different skills and sports for this elite level. Whilst there is limited research to support instructions and efficiency to a task, it would be beneficial for further research to compare this as well as focus on sporting skills and whether this again has an impact on performance level. When we look at applying instructions into practice, Benz et al. 2016 looks at 4 different characteristics: quantity, frequency, quality, and training versus competition. When we look at quantity of instructions, this is not exhausted to the amount of words which you provide the athlete, but also the type of instruction, whether that's internal or external. Poulton et al. Hypothesized that internal instructions provide a greater demand on the memory to process information, and therefore as a byproduct that hinders performance. And so providing an athlete external short instructions, we're able to enhance performance. With frequency, we're looking at how often and our timing of instructions. Quality, we're referring to providing the right instruction at the right time. We need to consider whether the athlete requires an internal and external cue. We need to consider the quantity of that cue and the frequency. Ultimately, we want to provide the most efficient instruction at that time for that athlete to bring upon a desired outcome. Finally, Ben speaks of the difference between training and competition. There may be a need to change the type of instruction depending on the 2 scenarios. To summarise the application and research of instructions, it is important to be aware that there are different types of instructions which a coach can provide and the impact that each of these have on our athlete. We have to take into consideration that different sports require different instructions and may have constraints such as time. We need to consider the athlete and their experience levels, as with sprinting shows that novice athletes benefit from external instructions, whilst elite benefit from internal or no focus instructions. I believe that further research is required in other sports other than sprinting, as the research shows little transferability into other sports and their demands.